I wanted to talk next briefly about the stages of relationships. And the reason that's important in terms of communication is that people often don't recognize that your relationship needs and requires a different type and different level of communication depending on what stage of the relationship you're in. And oftentimes people can't figure out, well, why are we having so many communication breakdowns right now? Why is it that suddenly things don't seem to work when we try to talk? And it may be that your relationship has kind of advanced to the next stage of the relationship, and the same type and level of communication that you utilized before is no longer really working for you, and that you need to shift. So the first phase or stage of any relationship you probably recognize quite well. Anyone want to just shout out what that first stage is when you're first falling in love?
Enamored.
What's that?
Enamored.
Enamored, yes. Anyone? The honeymoon stage, that's it, the honeymoon stage. Or some people call it new relationship energy, where you're just totally buzzed and blissed out with this new relationship energy. Now, when you're in that stage, generally, communication is so easy, because all you have to do is sit there and gaze into each other's eyes and drool, because, you're telepathic and you read each other's minds and you can finish each other's sentences, and, this person is the most perfect person on the planet. And so in that stage, communication is generally pretty simple and easy, because you're using a shortcut, and that shortcut is physical chemistry. Physical chemistry just short circuits the need for a lot of conversation, and that chemistry is so powerful that it just overwhelms whatever else is happening, and you're communicating sort of on that chemical circuit, and you don't really need to get into all of the serious issues. It's also because you're just falling in love, you don't know each other that well yet, you're both on good behavior, you're trying to impress each other, so you're really, some of your worst habits are kind of being kept hidden because you're trying to impress this new person. And they're trying to impress you. Plus, when you meet someone and fall in love, you're projecting a lot on them. There's a lot of projection and fantasy going on. You're fantasizing what the perfect lover and the perfect relationship is, and you're projecting that perfection onto the actual lover, who couldn't possibly live up to the hype that you're throwing in their direction. So eventually, it's all going to come crashing down, and you are going to enter a new phase in the relationship, which, what would you call that next stage? It's what I call the rude awakening, yes. Other people call it kind of a reality check, real life intervenes. And that's when you get into some of the more serious issues. When you're first dating, all you have to think about is where do we want to go to dinner, When you actually get into a serious relationship, there are all kinds of other decisions that need to be negotiated, and as your lives maybe start to become a little more connected and integrated, there's an awful lot more to negotiate about, and a lot more discussion that needs to happen. And somehow suddenly you're not so telepathic anymore, and you're not accurately reading your lover's mind anymore. You're reading their mind but getting it wrong a lot more often at that point. So that's why I call this the rude awakening stage, is that you're kind of, whoa, this is not really exactly what I thought. But that rude awakening is good. It's very healthy, because it means you're no longer just projecting onto your partner what you wish they would be. You're actually being more honest with them. They're being more honest with you. You're really dealing with real life. Because as wonderful as the honeymoon is, it can't go on forever. You can certainly still have that wonderful love and passion and everything, but it's never going to be the way it was when you didn't know the person well enough to know they weren't perfect. And you can't really go back to that because you already now know they're not perfect. So during that stage of the relationship, you really have to be negotiating about the more serious issues. You've discovered whether there are some incompatibilities you have, and you're having to talk about whether those incompatibilities are unsurpassable or whether they are something you can figure out how to make some compromises on. And that is the stage where people really do start having serious discussions. And an interesting thing that I've observed, again, it's a gross generalization about men and women, and again, a disclaimer that it's not always true, but our socialization is very, very intense around this. How long do you think the honeymoon stage lasts, and would anyone hazard a guess about what women think and what men think about this topic? You must have a guess, come on.
7.
What's that? What?
3 months. 3 months.
Well, if you ask women, they're most likely to say a year or more. If you ask men, they're more likely to say 3 months, up to 6 at the max. And who knows why that is, you know? It could mean that men are better judges of character and they figure out after 3 months that the person is not right for them, or it could mean they have a very short attention span, or it could mean that women are more delusional about hoping the relationship will work out even when there's all these red flags that it's not going to, or who knows. But that is my experience, that women tend to have a much longer period of where they're madly in love and just think the partner can do no wrong and are still in the honeymoon phase. That also can cause some communication problems. If you think you're still on a honeymoon and your partner thinks you've moved into the next stage of more of reality. After that, you'll get into the what I call the grow up or break up stage. And sometimes breaking up is exactly what you need to do. Sometimes you discover we just aren't compatible. We've had this fabulous, wonderful love affair for a year, and it's really been great, but now we discover that we are totally incompatible to really, you know, make a life together. So we just have to break up. And sometimes that's the smartest thing to do. You certainly see a lot of couples trying to stretch that out and make it work when it really is not going to. For other couples, it makes much more sense to do what I call grow up, you know, to, instead of break up, to be real grown-ups about the situation, to decide, you know, a great love affair is wonderful, but a lifetime of living together and really being a couple and a team could be even better. And even if it doesn't have as much of the sparkle and pizzazz that it had a year ago, we have the compatibility and we want to be together, and we're going to put in the effort to make it work. Excuse me. So at that point, most couples will make a decision that they're either going to put in the effort and try to resolve whatever issues they have that are either incompatibilities or issues that they just are not sure which direction they want to go, or they will decide to break up. And if they get through that stage, they're probably a couple years into the relationship at this point, then they're going to move into what I call the living in love stage, where you really resolved most of the major issues of conflict. And of course, all couples are going to have issues of conflict that are going to plague them throughout life. Let's face it, there's no couple that's not going to have any issue of conflict and that's going to resolve everything. But they'll decide that those issues are small enough and manageable enough that they can compromise and work something out. And it's at that point where your communication has to change as well, where the communication has to become more consistent and more frequent about more things, because you're at that point you're either living together or you're spending a lot of time together if you're not living together, and you're involved in a lot of things together. And so there's a lot more that you have to work on together. So at that point you usually don't have to have these all-night fights and talks and, you know, stay up till 3 in the morning talking about major issues, but you have to communicate very frequently about a lot of things. And I think a lot of couples, because they take each other for granted, or because they begin to think they know their partner so well that they don't have to talk to them or listen to them. And that's when communication problems set in. You're making too many assumptions about your partner and what they need and what they want and what they're willing to do and what's expected of you. And when you start making those kind of assumptions, you're taking your partner for granted and taking the relationship for granted, and that's where a lot of problems come in. So I just wanted to explain a little about how different stages of the relationship really require different types of communication, because a lot of people just get very confused where everything's going great with communication and then suddenly it seems to be breaking down. If that's the case, it often means you have moved to the next stage of your relationship, and you may have to discuss a little more about like what is the best way for you to communicate, what are the things you need to communicate about. So I want to move from here to talk about the 5 love languages, and you have a sheet for that too. The sheet that on the front says the 5 goals of communication, or what are the goals of communication, turn that over, and on the back are the 5 love languages. This is the only one of these techniques that is not mine. I stole this, and I've identified the person who's the original author of it. The other techniques we're talking about are things that I've just developed over time due to my work with clients. I stole this because Gary Chapman has come up with an extremely important concept. Has anyone read his book, The 5 Languages of Love? Or is anyone familiar with the concept? Okay. Who can explain it to us? Because I'm sure you're getting bored with me talking. Speak up loudly. Whoever is.
Everybody has different ways they feel like they receive love and give love. And knowing what your style or styles are helps you better communicate with your partner to say, oh, I really like to receive gifts as a sign of your love for me. And that helps them meet your need of showing you their love. And to know what your partner's love style is helps you meet their need.
Absolutely. You hit the nail right on the head. The whole concept with the 5 love languages is that there are 5 basic ways that human beings can give or receive love. 5 basic ways that people demonstrate their love for others and that they want people to demonstrate love to them. The problem comes in because most people have one of those languages that's primary for them. And even if you give them all 4 of the others and they don't get that 5th one, they will not feel loved and they will not be happy, and you will not be happy because you will be hearing about it every day, how unhappy they are. So the 5 languages of love, as you can see on your sheet there, the first, and they're in no particular order, the first one listed is physical touch, including affection and sex. Second is words of affirmation, endearment, and acknowledgement. Telling your partner really nice things, saying I love you, saying you're beautiful, acknowledging them for being a good parent, or for acknowledging them for doing something that they did for you. The third one is acts of service. This is the partner who drives you to the airport and does your laundry for you, cooks you nice meals. Someone who shows they love you, demonstrates their love by doing nice things for you. The 4th love language is quality time, spending quality time with your partner, reserving your prime time for them. It doesn't mean you don't give any of your time to anyone else. It just means that person is getting the most big chunk of your prime time, and a time when you are really going to be present and give them quality attention. And for some people, that is the only love language that they understand. It's the only love language they speak. And if they don't get that, they will be very unhappy and they will not feel loved. And last but definitely not least is giving and receiving gifts is the 5th love language. And this can be anything from just, I had a girlfriend that many years ago that liked to stop at Walgreens and buy me a Hershey bar on the way home from work. That was like a nice little way of giving me a gift. And that was just something that she just liked doing, this gift giving thing. I never really understood it. I love chocolate, of course, and was appreciative of that, but I never understood like that was a way of showing love. I thought it's just like chocolate. So but it can be something that simple, or it can be buying your partner diamonds and a Lexus, So it's some people, that is the way they show their love, and some people, that is the way they experience being loved. For some people, it has to do with a partner helping to support them financially to go back to school, or helping them with financial support to start a business or something like that. That it means my partner loves me enough, they want to support me in something that's going to make me happy, and they're willing to help me financially to do it. So I often have couples in my office for couples counseling, and I ask them to identify their partner's primary love language. And 9 times out of 10, they can't do it. These are couples even have been together 10, 15, 20 years. They do not know what love language their partner speaks, and they've been living with this person for many years. So I'm curious if anyone here in the audience, have you ever given this any thought about what your love language is and what your partner's love language is? Do you think you could guess it? No?
So I'm pretty sure that my partner's is quality time.
Ah, quality time. Uh-huh.
But my problem is that what I want to receive is all 5.
Ah.
Like, absolutely.
Oh. You don't have a primary one language. You want all 5.
I actually, yeah.
Oh.
I can't, because I'm thinking, okay, can I identify one? And I think it's 20% each. You know?
Wow. Might need 5 lovers for that. Just pick one who speaks each language. Anyone else have a guess on what your partner, what their language is?
Well, I don't have a partner right now, but I had one in the past, and it was interesting that my way of giving love was giving gifts.
Mhm.
I didn't like receiving them at all. I didn't do anything for me. So I think that's kind of interesting that I show it one way, and I just don't care to receive it that way at all.
Yeah, that is interesting, because there is a significant minority of people that have that. They speak one language when they're trying to give love, but they want a different one.
Yeah, I think it's like my family does that. They give gifts, and so I think I've learned it. But it doesn't mean, it doesn't touch my soul when somebody does it for me. I'm all about quality time.
Quality time, okay, another quality time. Huh? Am I the only one that's the physical touch junkie? No, okay, good. You're right. Sometimes I feel a little out of place because everyone's saying, oh, quality time, oh, acts of service, all those virtuous things, and I'm like, affection and sex, yeah, that's what we need. So, okay, so I'm not the only one. All right. Okay, what I often ask people to do, either in my office or an exercise at home, is take that sheet that has the 5 love languages on it, and on the left side, rate them from 1 to 5 for yourself, starting with the one that's the most important. And then on the right side of the page, rate them 1 to 5 what you think your partner's love languages are, and then compare those sheets, and you'll be surprised. You probably didn't guess right about at least some of their love languages. And what most people do have one that's primary, but a lot of people have 2 or 3 that are pretty important. You're a little unusual with all 5 there. Yes?
I was just going to say, I really relate to you about all 5, but what helps me differentiate is what makes me upset. And if I don't get the quality time, that's what pisses me off. I can, be okay with not getting some of the others, even though I really like the other stuff too. But when I'm like, okay, what's making me unhappy? If I'm not getting the time I want from the other person, if I feel like I'm getting the leftover time, I get really angry.
So that is really excellent. That is an excellent way to differentiate, to say, what would make me leave this relationship if I didn't get it? And it sounds like for you, quality time, it would be it. Sounds like for you, I don't know, maybe you'd all 5. Physical touch. That'd be the one thing that would make you leave. Okay, so that may be your primary love language. So